Case 1. The Tepe Murders. On the morning of December 30th, 2025, a man named Spencer Tepe failed to show up to work at his dental practice. Spencer was a 37-year-old dentist living in the Wineland Park neighborhood of Columbus, Ohio. He was reliable, well-liked, and had a young family at home. Missing work without any notice wasn't like him at all. So one of his co-workers became worried and requested a welfare check at his house. Officers were dispatched to 1411 North 4th Street and approached the front door, but nothing could have prepared them for what was waiting inside. Officers discovered the bodies of Spencer and his 39-year-old wife, Monique Tepe, both shot to death inside their own home. The murders had taken place sometime between 2 and 5 a.m. that morning, according to police. The couple's 2 young children, ages 1 and 4, along with the family dog, were found unharmed in another part of the house. Somehow the killer had moved throughout the home without disturbing them. But the rest of the crime scene told a much darker story. The autopsy reports revealed the brutality of the attack, which obviously can't be discussed in details here on YouTube due to YouTube guidelines. Investigators recovered 9mm shell casings at the scene, and according to the indictment, the weapon used had been equipped with a firearm muffler or suppressor. There was no gun left behind. There were no signs of forced entry. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were doing. And it didn't take long for the investigation to find them. Surveillance footage from the neighborhood captured a hooded figure walking in the alley near the Tepe home around the estimated time of the killings. People also tracked a silver SUV that just arrived before the murders and left shortly after. The vehicle had unusual features, including a stolen Ohio license plate, which made it easier for detectives to follow. That SUV eventually led investigators to Rockford, Illinois, and it led them to a man named Michael David McKee. Michael McKee was a 39-year-old vascular surgeon working at OSF St. Anthony Medical Center in Rockford. He was a respected doctor in the community, the kind of person no one would ever suspect of something like this. But he had one specific connection to Monique that made him an immediate suspect. He was her ex-husband. The two had married in 2015 and separated before she filed for divorce in May 2017, with the divorce being finalized in June of the same year. Their marriage had lasted less than 2 years, and according to people close to Monique, it had been a nightmare from start to finish. Monique's brother-in-law, Rob Mesla, appeared on Good Morning America and described how McKee used to torment Monique during their marriage.
She just had to get away from him. Myself and many others were well aware of kind of the negative impact that he had on her. She was willing to do anything to get out of there.
He said many family members were well aware of the negative impact and the abuse that he had put her through. Monique had reportedly told friends and family for years that her ex-husband was dangerous, controlling, and obsessed with her. A probable cause affidavit later revealed that one witness told police Monique had said McKee forced unwanted sex upon her and had strangled her. Another person told police that McKee had told Monique he could kill her at any time and he would find her and buy the house right next to her, that she would always be his wife. For years, those threats had felt like words, until the morning of December 30th, when they suddenly became real. But the most disturbing detail about the case wasn't the murders themselves, it was how long McKee had been watching. On December 6, 2025, just over 3 weeks before the killings, surveillance video caught McKee on the property of the Tepes' home while the couple was out of town, attending the Big Ten Championship football game in Indiana. He had been inside their world long before he pulled the trigger. He knew the layout of their house. He knew their routines. He knew when they were home and when they weren't, and he had spent weeks planning the perfect time to act. On the day of the murders, McKee's cell phone was left inactive at the hospital where he worked for 17 hours, an apparent attempt to create a digital alibi while he made the drive to Ohio. He had thought of nearly everything: the stolen license plate, the suppressor, the phone left behind, but the one thing he couldn't account for was the volume of cameras in modern American neighborhoods. McKee was arrested on January 10th, 2026 in Rockford, Illinois. He was later indicted in Franklin County
State of Ohio versus Michael McKee is 26 CR 253. There are 5 counts. 4 counts of aggravated murder, unclassified felonies, and 1 count of aggravated burglary, felony 1. Each of these counts come with a 3 and a 6-year firearm specification.
At a January 14 police briefing, the Columbus police chief described the killings as a targeted, domestic violence-related attack.
This is still an active and ongoing investigation. Detectives are still going through evidence, tips, and videos. We can't speak to all the specific details related to this case, so we don't want to jeopardize the ultimate goal of conviction. But what we can say, this was a targeted attack. This was a domestic violence-related attack. As we know, McKee is the ex-husband of Monique Tepe.
During a search of McKee's property, investigators recovered a firearm they said was consistent with the weapon believed to have been used in the homicides. McKee was booked in the James A. Carnes Correctional Center on January 20th, ahead of a scheduled court hearing on January 23rd, where he pleaded not guilty. He remains in custody at the Franklin County Jail. Monique had spent years trying to outrun the man she once married. She moved on. She built a new life. She had 2 beautiful kids with a man who loved her. But in the end, he found her anyway, just like he had promised her all those years ago. Case 2, the Zark family haunting. In recent years, an Indian family started uploading videos to a YouTube channel called Zark Scary Hunting, also known as Zark Scary. At first, the channel looked like a typical family vlog. Home videos, casual recordings, nothing out of the ordinary. But something inside that family's home was about to change everything. According to their videos, the haunting began after they hired a new maid.
It's at the door. Stop it!
She would stand in random parts of the house and stare directly into the security cameras for long stretches of time without moving. She would mumble to herself in empty rooms. She would behave strangely around the children. Eventually, the family had enough and let her go. That's when the activity started. The family kept uploading, episode after episode. The series, which they titled The Zark Family Haunting, eventually grew to dozens of videos, chronicling everything from minor incidents to terrifying nighttime encounters. And the deeper the series went, the more disturbing the footage became. The most unsettling part of their story came when they decided to investigate the maid further. According to the family, they consulted a local priest and began searching their home for anything unusual. What they found, hidden in different parts of the house, were small objects bound with strings and knots, left behind by the maid as a final act of revenge. They claim that once the objects were removed and proper rituals were performed, the activity gradually stopped. One of their later videos is titled The End of the Zark Family Haunting and serves as a kind of conclusion to the series. That said, the channel has its share of doubters as well. Critics have pointed out how convenient the camera angles often are, how some of the movements only happen when no one is looking directly at them, and how the family has continued posting content even after the supposed haunting ended. Some viewers are convinced the family genuinely experienced something supernatural. Others believe the entire arc was staged for entertainment from the beginning. But like with most cases of this kind, the truth is buried somewhere in the middle. The family has never broken character, and they continue to insist that everything they captured was real. Case 3. The Donna Ayres tapes. Donna Ayres is a mother of 4 from the Blackpool area in Lancashire, England, and for over 15 years, she has been uploading some of the strangest home videos you will ever come across on YouTube. Her story begins around 2009 when her brother Paul passed away. According to Donna, the two had a complicated and often troubled relationship in life. So when strange things started happening in her home shortly after his death, she became convinced that Paul had returned, not in peace, but to torment her. And what she claims has been happening to her ever since sounds like something straight out of a horror movie. Donna says her home has been hit by an aggressive poltergeist that has followed her through at least 5 different houses. She has reported objects flying across rooms.
I'll just show you, that there's nothing there. Just a regular bunch of keys. Just your average keys on attack. There's the picture that got moved, and I'm getting a feeling again. Whoa! I knew that was going to happen.
Cups rattling on counters.
It's just an old metal cup. Metal. Weird. Oh my gosh. The surface isn't wet or anything, it's all dry. So there's no reason for it to be moving. And it's moving again.
Spoons spinning on their own. But the most disturbing claims are the physical ones. Donna says she has woken up multiple times to feel an invisible force pinning her down to the bed, leaving unexplained bruises on her arms and shoulders the next morning. She has also been reported being scratched and shoved when no one else was in the room. What makes her case particularly unique is the sheer volume of footage she has uploaded over the years. Her YouTube channel is filled with raw, unedited videos of household objects appearing to move on their own in real time. There is no jump cut, no flashy editing, just static shots of kitchens and living rooms, with objects suddenly flying off shelves or sliding across tables. Some clips are genuinely unsettling, even for skeptics. UK tabloids, including the Daily Mirror and the Daily Mail, picked up her story around 2015, helping it spread to a massive audience. Donna gave interviews insisting that what she was going through was real. She described her life as a living hell, but refused to be driven out of her own home by whatever was tormenting her. However, her claims have not gone unchallenged. Skeptics who have analyzed her footage frame by frame have pointed to what they believe are visible signs of fishing line or thin threads attached to several of the moving objects. In some clips, the movement is too smooth to look natural. In others, the objects seem to follow a predictable arc that suggests they're being pulled rather than thrown. Critics argue this is staged content built to grow her channel. But Donna has stayed firm. She has never admitted to staging anything, and she continues to upload new videos to this day. So is what's happening to Donna real? Is it elaborate hoax footage made for clicks? Or is it some mix of genuine paranormal experiences and dramatized recordings made for engagement? At this point, it's nearly impossible to say for sure, and her channel remains one of the longest running paranormal video archives on the internet. Either way, the footage is some of the most watched personal, haunting video ever uploaded by a single person. Case 4. The David Parker Ray Tapes. David Parker Ray was born in 1939 in New Mexico, and from the outside, he looked like a completely ordinary man. He worked as a park ranger near Elephant Butte Lake. He had family members who lived nearby. Neighbors described him as quiet and polite, the kind of guy you'd say hello to at the grocery store and never think about again. But behind his property sat a small, soundproof trailer that he called the Toy Box. Inside, he had built one of the most disturbing rooms ever discovered by law enforcement. It was lined with restraints, cameras, recording equipment, and torture devices. And it was designed for one purpose: to hold and torment women he and his accomplices abducted from the surrounding area. Some of the victims were never seen again. Others survived, but were left so heavily drugged that they couldn't remember what had happened to them. The investigation only uncovered the truth in 1999, when a victim named Cynthia Vigil managed to escape while still wearing a metal collar around her neck. Her account led police directly to David's trailer, and what they found inside was beyond anything they had prepared for. However, the most chilling piece of evidence was the audio tapes. Before he would do anything to his victims, David would drug them into unconsciousness and place them inside the toy box. When they finally woke up, the first thing they would hear was his voice, but it wasn't him in the room speaking. It was a pre-recorded cassette tape playing through a speaker. The voice was calm, slow, almost polite. He would introduce himself, explain exactly where they were, exactly what was going to happen to them, and exactly how long it would last. He laid out rules. He told them about the women who had come before them. He explained that when he was finished, they would be drugged so heavily with substances like sodium pentothal and phenobarbital that they would have no memory of what had been done to them, and might even be released alive on a remote road somewhere. The full tape ran for 10 minutes, and it was used on multiple victims. When the FBI raided his property, investigators recovered multiple recordings just like it, along with photo albums, written notes, and equipment that suggested David had been operating his system for decades. Survivors who testified at his trial described the tapes as the worst part of the experience. So the question now was, how many victims had he really claimed? Investigators believed the number could be as high as 60, though only a handful of cases were ever directly tied to him in court. Many of the women he is suspected of taking the lives of were never identified, and their remains were never recovered. David was charged in connection with multiple victims and sentenced to over 200 years in prison. He died of a heart attack behind bars in 2002, before investigators could pull any more information out of him. To this day, the Toy Box tapes are considered some of the most disturbing audio evidence ever entered into a court record. Out of respect for the victims, the most graphic portions have never been released to the public. But even the brief sections that have leaked over the years are enough to give you a glimpse of what these women heard right before everything went dark. Case 5. The Polish Possession Video. On the night of December 31st, 2022, in a small Polish village called Grubsko, a family dialed the emergency line, terrified. Their 20-year-old daughter, Kamila, had locked herself in the attic of their home and was behaving in ways none of them could explain. They had tried everything to coax her out. Nothing was working. By the time officers arrived at the house, the situation had escalated into something they weren't trained to handle. As soon as they stepped inside, they could hear her in the attic, but the sounds coming out of her weren't human. They were deep, guttural growls that seemed too low to come from a 20-year-old woman. In one clip, you can hear officers shouting at her in Polish, using harsh language to try and snap her out of whatever state she was in. Nothing worked. She kept growling. At one point, the camera catches her face at the attic window under the flashing lights of the police vehicles. Her expression is hollow, almost like nobody was home behind her eyes. When the videos eventually hit Reddit or the r/weird subreddit, the comments section exploded. Many viewers were convinced they were watching a real demonic possession. Others pointed to the country's deep Catholic roots, where exorcisms are still officially recognized by the church. For a brief moment, it seemed like the internet had stumbled onto something genuinely supernatural. Which begs the question, what was actually happening to Kamila that night? The explanation, as it turned out, was far more grounded than what most viewers expected. After the second video ends, police forced their way into the attic, restrained her, and rushed her to a nearby hospital. She was examined overnight and released the following day. No criminal charges were filed against her. And in a later private interview with a paranormal investigator, Kamila, who openly stated she did not believe in the supernatural, gave her own account of the night. She had no memory of any of it. According to her, the episode was the result of years of accumulated mental health struggles, including deep depression, severe anxiety, and a personality disorder she had been silently battling. Additional reports also pointed to two other possible factors. The first was a minor head injury Kamila had sustained from a volleyball game just days earlier. The second was a Ouija board session she had done with friends right before the incident. Whether either of those triggered something deeper or were just coincidences, no one can say for sure. That said, plenty of people online still believe there's more to the story. The sound she was making, the strength she displayed, and the complete loss of memory afterwards don't fit neatly into a typical mental health crisis. I'm not going to tell you what to believe, but I will say this. The fact that there are two completely reasonable ways to interpret this footage, and neither one of them is comforting, is exactly why this case has stuck around as long as it has. A mental health crisis that severe is frightening, and if it wasn't that, then whatever it was is even more frightening. There's no version of this story that's okay. Either way, the videos are still up, and whether you believe it was a psychological breakdown or something darker, the footage is some of the most disturbing, personal video ever uploaded to the internet. Case 6, the Xuxa Park Fire. On January 11th, 2001, the Brazilian network Rede Globo was taping another episode of its massively popular children's show, Xuxa Park, at the Projac Studios in Rio de Janeiro. The host, Xuxa Menegel, was a household name across Latin America, often called the Queen of Little Ones. Her show was the highlight of every Saturday morning for millions of Brazilian kids. So the studio that day was packed with families, dancers, and an excited audience of children waiting to see their idol close up. The taping had gone exactly as planned for hours. A live audience of about 300 people, most of whom were children, had filled the soundstage to watch Xuxa and her dancers perform the show-closing musical number. Cameras were rolling. The kids were singing along. By all accounts, it was a normal, joyful day. But that was about to change in less than a minute. A small fire started in the set's mechanical spaceship, the elaborate prop that Xuxa would normally use to exit the stage at the end of each episode. For a few seconds, the performers continued their musical number, completely unaware of what was happening behind them. A quick-thinking stagehand rushed in with a small fire extinguisher, hoping to put the flames out before anyone in the audience even noticed. The fire suddenly erupted violently, engulfing the entire spaceship, and the stagehand was forced to retreat. What had been a small flame seconds earlier was now a wall of fire, spreading across the entire set. And because the set was built from highly flammable materials, things got much worse. I want you to actually think about what that would look like from a child's perspective. You've waited weeks, maybe months, to come watch your favorite TV host in person. You're in the front row. You're singing along. And then within 60 seconds, the entire stage is on fire, and the room is filling with black smoke. Some of these kids were 7, 8 years old. That's not something you just get over. You can see Xuxa freeze for a split second before her instincts kick in. When the smoke finally cleared, the damage was massive.
Eu só vi na hora que o fogo estava subindo para cima e todo mundo correndo. Foi no momento que eu corri junto.
Although no one died, 26 people were injured, with 7 of them in critical condition. 3 of the injured, including 2 children aged 7 and 10, suffered second and third degree burns and were rushed to a specialized hospital for treatment. Xuxa's personal bodyguard, Leonilson, and the show's resident clown, Tepe, were also among the seriously injured. Both men had run back into the burning set to save children who were trapped, including one child who had become stuck in one of the on-set rides. So the obvious question is, how did something like this happen on national TV in front of hundreds of children? The investigation later determined the cause was much more mundane than people expected. An electrical short circuit inside the spaceship prop had ignited the highly flammable set materials. No arson, no foul play, just a faulty wire in a place that should have been one of the safest in the country. But the deeper investigators dug, the more troubling the case became. A later investigation by Rio de Janeiro authorities revealed significant safety lapses at the project studios, including inadequate fire extinguishers that were unsuitable for the set's materials and insufficient emergency protocols. In other words, the studio was never ready for something like this. The fire didn't happen because of bad luck alone. It happened because the people in charge had cut corners. Xuxa was not physically injured, but she was deeply affected by what had happened. She reportedly spent a long time afterwards suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder and visited the fire victims and their families in the hospital frequently. Xuxa Park was put on hiatus and ultimately canceled, with 8 unaired episodes recorded before the fire never airing out of respect to the children traumatized by the incident. Today, the footage of the fire is still online, and nearly 25 years later, it remains one of the most disturbing pieces of live television ever recorded.